Hello and welcome once again to this podcast. And someone was asking me earlier on, what's the name of your podcast? I said, it's a podcast. But my name is Oluwamu Mnwazi, and I am sitting here today with the Honorable Chris Swepu, the Secretary General of a Azanian People's Organization, AZAPO.
Yes.
And I'm so happy that you are able to sit down with me. Say, welcome to my platform.
No, thank you very much. I'm particularly happy to have been caught off guard on my way to my branch. You see the way I'm wearing. I'm going to my Kocha branch in Patensi to do organizational work.
Inzalelwane yasePatensi. I'm really happy because just listening and talking to him, I realized that I am sitting here with one of the brains that we have in the country. This is a law student and graduate. He works currently with is it UWC, right?
No, I've got a consulting firm, so I work across. I do strategy, policy development, and of course webinars with many institutions.
Yeah, we already have a competition here. Thank you so much, sir, for coming. I really
thank you.
We've had briefly a conversation, and now I'm holding this book, Steve Biko.
Yes.
This is, to me, a Steve Biko month. Last Tuesday, we've commemorated, not really celebrated, the death of Biko. We've commemorated the death of Biko. And I think it's 46 years since his passing. And I wanted to find out what is the mood like with AZAPO? What is the feeling like? What is happening?
Look, for us, it's a feeling of triumph. We've had many programs around the country, unprecedented. Started in the Western Cape, where we bought books for learners, collaborated with schools, taught learners how to read and be contextual in their reading, gave sanitary towels to female learners. We then went to Khosimamburu, where our president, Nalvis Kekema, went on to lay a wreath to Biko. We always invoke the spirit of Bantu Biko in whatever we do. We then went to Ginsberg to lay a wreath at Biko's mother's grave, Mamgete, and at Steve Biko's grave itself. And then we had one of the most successful ever pilgrimages at the Steve Biko Center, where we invited different organizations to come deliver messages of commemorating Steve Biko. As you may very well be aware, that we are the leader of the left, we are the unifier of the left. We are working with the PAC to unify organizations of the left. And of course, we came to Woma High School, where our regional chairperson went to speak to learners about Steve Biko, because you would know that the most painful journey of Steve Biko, even though it ended in Khosimamburu prison, it was here in PE where he was brutalized. So we have a partnership with the Nelson Mandela University. Very successful lecture we have had. In fact, the most successful in the 13 years of that partnership. So the mood in AZAPO, in that sense, is a mood of triumph. Triumph not only because all these events meant to remind people about Steve Biko have occurred in the successful manner in which they have happened, but triumph because the message for which Biko died for is resonating across organizations that you would never thought would honor Steve Biko are doing so. Everybody is realizing the message of Biko. So that is the triumph and that we are talking about. That's what we are celebrating, because as much as we are the custodians of Bantu Biko, we want the message for which Biko died for to permeate every sector of society. And we think that is happening.
No, it is happening because from time to time, there are certain occurrences that take place within the country, and then his spirit, his thought, his ideas of Black consciousness, just his grand thinking earlier on in his 20s, because he passed away when he was in his 30s, that still exists today, that has given us vocabulary to talk about our Blackness, to talk about how do we assert ourselves in the current, whether current day politics or geopolitical dynamics that we're experiencing. We always go back to who I write, what I like. But maybe briefly as well, is that internally, how do we invoke as AZAPO that sort of conscience, that sort of psyche of this giant that once lived? How do we memorialize him outside now, what we do outside and publicly for the lectures and things like that?
Look, in AZAPO, we always live the life that Biko lived. We always preach the philosophy that Biko always preached. And of course, he was not alone in developing the kind of thoughts that you are talking about. Many of those comrades that he was with, was Seth Cooper, Bomsibudi Mangena, Pandelani Nefolobodwe, and many others, are still active members of the Central Committee of the Azanian People's Organization. So we continue in everything we do. We continue to live the ideals of the Black consciousness philosophy. You see our commentary on many things that are happening in our country. Our lens is the Black consciousness philosophy. The first question we ask, how is the dignity of Black people affected by this decision? How is this policy that is being passed affecting the Black condition? So our lens is that it is the freedom of Black people, it is the restoration of the dignity of Black people, and ultimately the return of the land is quite critical.
And going back, because now when you're talking about the land, we're going to talk about the political heritage. It's a heritage month in South Africa as well. There's a unique political heritage that we have, and part of this heritage includes the songs, the chants that sometimes bring back the wounds, and sometimes it seems that we are again fighting against one another. And I'm going to mention a few. We sing a song, Tina Sizwe, and it evokes a particular emotion. There was a recent song now that was sang at FNP by EFF about kill the Boer, kill the farmer. And the more we try to forget about hurting one another, there's this heritage existence that we still need to grapple with. What becomes, and I think there's another one that you want to mention about one bullet.
One settler, one bullet.
One settler, one bullet. What do we do with this heritage, political heritage?
Well, firstly, let's agree that Black people hurt no one. Black people are the victims here. They've been dispossessed of their land, their dignity, and these chants, these slogans, these songs were a response to affirm the dignity of Black people, to inspire Black people in the struggle against colonialism and racial oppression in this country. And to that extent, they are our heritage. There is not a single Boer that was killed because there was a song, kill the Boer, kill the farmer, or rather a chant, kill the poor, kill the farmer. The one settler, one bullet. If you are a contextual, you will then think we are saying, or rather the PAC is saying, kill someone now. These are struggle songs. They are part of our heritage. Just like you still have the Union Building, which is a heritage of white people, which in my view actually is an insult and a sad reminder of the oppression that Black people still continue. So for the South African Human Rights Commission and an institution full of Black commissioners who understand the context of our struggle and the heritage that is our song, to then take the PAC to court as they are doing now. AZAPO stands opposed to that, and we're saying we'll ask for no one's permission to sing our songs. We are not going to forget. The Jews are still remembering Nuremberg. Even today, nobody's asking the Jews to forget. But every person wants black people to forget. Why must we forget what has happened? We must teach this history to our kids. We must sing these songs to our kids so that they carry them as lessons of what we fought for and continue to fight for. If we are preaching forgetfulness, then they will forget about Steve Biko, that there was a Steve Biko who lived for the return of the land. They will forget about Sobukwe. They will forget about Chris Hani. And we are in a struggle against forgetfulness. That's why we must sing these songs. You have statues of Paul Kruger and many other people. Go to Church Square, there's Paul Kruger there. So you don't know. Our oppressors who are continuing to oppress us through their hegemony over our economy want us to forget now. No, and we are not going to forget. Our struggle is against forgetting. We will take the Human Rights Commission head on these heritage songs. And we don't care who they take. In AZAPO, because I told you earlier that our lenses are black consciousness. Our lenses are about the black condition. We don't care who is being taken to court. You would recall when the EFF, Malema, was taken to court. We were there. It was our comrades who stormed the court and repeated the chant, kill the Boer, kill the farmer. So we will defend anyone. It is about defending our heritage. We are not sectarian or party political about it. We will defend our heritage.
Okay, just briefly, because this is really topical in the country, and for rightful reasons, because we need to grapple with this historic account that still needs to be understood and known by our children. And then, would it sound differently if someone else sings a song that talks about the K word and they are white? Would we then take that person, and if they are white, to the Constitutional Court? And would we, as AZAPO now, see it as a necessary intervention when somebody who has had the different experience in the apartheid system sing a K song against, and then they say that they invoke its heritage? We're not trying to forget. I'm asking this because these are conversations that are taking place.
No, I think it's important that you ask that question.
Yes.
We won't just take them to the Constitutional Court. We'll kick them out of this country. You must remember, this is a country of black people. That must not be forgotten. The settlers invaded this country, insulted us, killed us. So what heritage is that? They cannot continue to insult us. There's no heritage there. It is continuation of oppression. And these symbols, in fact, I blame the ANC for being so timid and anti-black. These symbols should have been removed. The first day they ascended to political power, they should have renamed this country into Azania, not the direction that settlers were taking to some other country. When they rested here, we opened our doors and they kicked us out. So context is very important. You oppress people, then you cannot claim that's your heritage. We have been fighting against that all the time.
Okay. It's, again, really, AZAPO, because you are the embodiment in the face of Steve Biko, whom we are celebrating. And yes. He also talks about that there shall be no minority or majority, right?
Yes.
And does he also reflect on non-racialism?
Anti-racism, yes.
Anti-racism.
We are more than non-racial. We are anti-racism. We are not non-white. We don't define ourselves in terms of white being the and us being non-white. We're not non-white. We're anti-racist. We believe in a non-racist country, an egalitarian society where there shall be no white, no black, no majority, no minority, but just people. However, we are not there yet.
Yes.
Now, our weapon of struggle, our response to the current conditions must acknowledge that we are still dealing with a neo-colonial setup in the country where whites are still in charge of the economy, where whites are still in charge of our lives. Leave the black Manchingilanes who are governing on behalf of monopoly capital. So our response, the antithesis is black consciousness. It doesn't mean that because we want an egalitarian society, because we have defined the end goal to be a country where there is no minority. Remember, we say one Azania, one nation. That should be sufficient to tell you of what kind of a country we want, where we create one nation. But you are not going to ignore the division, the racial division, the class divisions that are there, which in your waging of the struggle, you must respond to.
This is potentially one of the most, I would say, difficult interview we've had interview, but based on the personality Biko and the ideas that he died for, and now the resurfacing again of the need to reflect on his life and his being. I want to before I get to another probably difficult conversation, I want you to reflect on the difficulty of asserting, Biko's legacy in the current day South Africa.
It was initially difficult because, you see, when 1994 came, there was excitement. You will remember Bishop Tutu, may his soul rest in peace, upon voting, exclaimed, "I am free at last." Now, you and I know that the conditions of oppression do not change because you have now all of a sudden cast a vote. But that's a kind of euphoria that was there. Then to assert the views of Biko and black consciousness at that particular time was very difficult. People were excited. Remember, we told our people that there's no freedom in this thing. We are just collectively excited, but there's no freedom. There's no land in this freedom. And people in that euphoria actually saw you as a bad person. Why would you not want me to vote? So that excitement has waned off. It is people who come to us and say Biko was right. It is people who now are preaching black consciousness to us to say, you guys were so right. How did you manage not to be so excited when the rest of the country was excited? You guys stood against this settlement. You refused to go to CODESA. When you were, you would have been exposed to so much resources. Remember, people were paid to be there. Offices were open for them. They were given money to campaign to support the settlement. We refused those offers. We stood firm that there is no freedom in this thing. So to answer your question, it is much easier now because our views are taking shape. The things we have been saying all along in hostile environments are now said by university students everywhere you go. Communities are toy-toying every day. And when they toy-toy, they invoke black consciousness. That there's no freedom in this thing. We were fooled. So it's quite easier to now preach the philosophy. But we must also appreciate that we live in an anti-black world. Black people are in positions of power, or rather in political positions, but the power lies elsewhere. Recently, there was an economic cluster meeting chaired by President Ramaphosa. Guess where it took place? In Stellenbosch. Of all the offices that you find in this country, they had to go and meet in Stellenbosch. And then you blame President Zuma for some time meeting in Saxon World. So these are some of the problems we have. The world is anti-black. Black people are taking black people to court for singing and chanting slogans that they chanted during the struggle. It shows you that transformation, and this is another lesson we were giving in the early 90s, that transformation is not about changing white faces with black faces. The white power structure remains. Those black faces in these positions are still serving the white power structure.
As if this is not controversial enough, I'm going to add another thing. And this is about the death of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. Without even preempting my positionality on the question, what is the reflection on the the death of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi?
Yeah, it's a tough one.
And I'm happy because I'm also asking you as the SG, but also the spokesperson of AZAPO.
Yes, I am the acting spokesperson of AZAPO and the Secretary General, yes. Look, AZAPO takes the posture that says the history of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi is recorded. Everybody knows the brutality that visited people. Not just Mangosuthu Buthelezi, of how homeland leaders collaborated with the apartheid government. That history is recorded, and others may have a different perspective about it. But our feeling is that when someone has passed on, whilst we reflect on that history, we do send condolences. Because the condolences are not to the dead person. That's another thing. When you are sending condolences, you are not saying, oh, this was a good person or this was a bad person. You are saying to those who remain, who the person resonates in their hearts to. You are saying condolences to those people. So we're saying condolences to the IFP, which is an organization that valued the prince. We're saying condolences to his family. What do Africans expect us to do? To say to his family that remains that no, go to hell and so on. No, we're saying condolences to his family, and may God comfort them because they have lost a loved one that matters to them.
And this book, Biko, again, one of my favorite quotes, and I'll repeat it as long as I need to, that we as Africans bring to the world a more human face. And this is the human face that you've just given us, isn't it?
Precisely. So when we say condolences to the family of Babu Buthelezi, we are precisely interpreting Biko, because we could have chosen to dwell on the past, the atrocities and so on. But we are choosing a more human face. We are Africans, and we stand with his family during their hour of need. This is what Biko would have wanted us to do, without distorting his history, of course.
Yes.
But Dr. Buthelezi lived with us for 95 years. For the past 30 years, nobody has been speaking about those things. We have been talking about the Buthelezi of yesterday and so on. And now all of a sudden people want us to not to be African. And we are not such an organization. And the same people have said nothing about F.W. de Klerk, who passed on. They are saying nothing about the oppressors who are passing on. And by the way, maybe you don't want me to go there. A section of the liberation movement has had its own atrocities. having fought and killed amongst black people, black on black violence. So must we pick up on who was president at the time and then say we will not offer condolences on that person's death? No, we don't think that's the approach. Condolences to the IFP and condolences to the Buthelezi family and the Zulu royal monarch.
So evidently, I can have long conversation with Chris Swepu. You know, I almost gave you a political name, Chris Swepu.
Yes.
And also by virtue of being located in the Black consciousness philosophy, I wanted to also find out of the positioning of Biko internationally. What might we not know that AZAPO knows?
Look, Bantu Biko is commemorated in many places. He is treated like a god in Brazil. They have monuments of Biko. They commemorate him on a yearly basis. We have seen that countries like Liverpool have got monuments of him, and they are remembering him as well. There are many universities in America that have programs to remember Bantu Biko, because you would recall that there are many Black consciousness organizations over there. We ourselves have a partnership with the All African People's Revolutionary Party, which was in Ginsberg. You would recall that the All African People's Revolutionary Party have their headquarters in Washington, D.C., and are the organization that was formed by Stokely Carmichael, who now goes by the name Kwame Ture. He is now late, and he passed on immediately after he had visited Tanzania through AZAPO and was touring all over the country and ultimately addressed the main rally in the commemoration of Steve Biko in Ginsberg. So Biko is remembered in many, many, many countries outside South Africa. Even in the African continent, there are many countries that remember him.
Maybe because our time is coming to an end, and I'm really excited for this kind of conversation to be taking place. And I know that the more we invoke the spirit of Biko, sometimes we take the name away from his genesis. Locate Biko for us, organizationally.
Look, Biko believed in organization. He formed with others the South African SASO, the South African Student Organization, which was a student organization in 1968, having realized that to exist in NUSAS, which was pushing a white agenda, was quite problematic. He then said, we can't watch from the sidelines white people playing a game that we should be playing. From there, they did realize that in order to mobilize black people across the country to fight for their liberation in an organized fashion, they had to form the Black People's Convention. The Black People's Convention was then banned along many other Black consciousness organizations on the 19th of October in 1977, after his death by the apartheid government. But because people in the Black consciousness movement are smart, they studied the environment. You'll remember others were banned in 1968 and could not operate. We then realized, but what is banned is the name. Let's rename this organization. And in 1978, we renamed it the Azanian People's Organization. So contextually, that is Biko's institutional arrangement in terms of organization. But as you are aware that even though we then institutionalized Biko, because remember others were pushing many narratives about him. Another liberation movement was saying he's a CIA agent, trying to decampaign him and his influence. We have had to commemorate and immortalize him for over all those years. AZAPO stood to defend Stephen Biko. We are happy that everybody is now on the bandwagon and that the ideas of Steve Biko and Steve Biko is out there for anybody to commemorate and celebrate, because we do not want to hold on to him and the ideas. We want them to influence society, permeate all aspects, all spheres of society. So we are happy that Biko is commemorated and celebrated throughout the length and breadth of this country by different people in various spheres of society. He has been immortalized by 2 churches who have declared him a saint. And when we look at those things, we tap ourselves in the back. We say we have done it, because this is what we have been doing in commemorating him every year. We have been institutionalizing him, and we tap ourselves in the back. We say, I know, we have succeeded.
Now, I'm going to come to a close, real close.
Yeah, I know that's the problem.
But once more, what is in AZAPO for the youth of South Africa in its diverse nature?
Look, AZAPO is an organization whose target market is the youth. You'll recall that Steve Biko died at the age of 30. He himself did most of his work between the age of 19 and 23 and was banned thereafter, banished into house arrest and so on. So we are essentially an organization that targets young people, that fights for young people, which is why it is a concern to us that so many of our youth are languishing in jail. Many of them are unemployed. Graduates are unemployed. So if you read our manifesto that we would be launching very soon, you would realize central to what we want to do is to focus on young people. That's why even in these commemorations, we are going to schools to teach about Black consciousness, to teach about Black dignity and pride. So even the political programs that we want to implement when we are government in this country are based on the restoration of the dignity of our people. And that restoration rests on our young people not being in this precarious position that they are in at the moment. So you would see that we are very much focused on young people. That's why the institutions that have been created for them, we are worried when they're not functioning optimally. Your institutions such as the youth, what do you call this useless thing? NYDA. We're worried when those institutions are serving sectarian political interest instead of servicing young people across the country.
Again, we're coming to an end, but AZAPO has had a number of silent wins that nobody knows about. There's a Mangena clause that you might want to educate us about.
Or you're speaking about the appointment of our Honorary President, Dr. Msibudi Mangena. Yes, when he was in Parliament representing AZAPO, President Begi came knocking, because you'll recall that our Honorary President is a scientist. Came knocking, wanting his services as Deputy Minister of Education, responsible specifically for maths and science, and ultimately as Minister of Science and Technology. We then insisted that, no, we have no problem with releasing that skill to serve the country. But we still needed our seat and our identity as a political party. The constitution then had to be amended, because you would recall that the president could only appoint one deputy minister outside parliament. So before President Mangena had to take up the position, he had to relinquish his parliamentary seat. So they then appointed him outside parliament and amended the constitution to cater for 2 deputy ministers, if not 3, outside parliament. And that came to be known as the Mangena clause in the constitution.
I would love to interview him if he could be in town. Please do let me know. But now I know
I'll certainly do.
Also, Seba Chigelele, where AZAPO is rushing to his branch meeting in Patensi, and yes. I don't want to hold him any further. But it was important that we have him. I'm going to ask you also to conclude. Yeah. It's important that we have you on the basis of the importance of this month and Steve Biko,
yes,
as a central figure, especially this week.
Yeah, in fact, I'm going to my branch because we have an important campaign. We're going to the communities. We call it Sign for Biko. Remember, these people who don't want us to participate in the legislatures have now passed a piece of legislation, the Electoral Amendment Act, that requires that we have 107,000 signatures just to be eligible to be on the ballot paper. So we're going to our people. They are responding very well. They are signing. They are saying, we want to see AZAPO contesting elections. So that's what I'm doing in Patensi. And our leaders are all over the country doing the same. And our people are responding. And thank you once again for hijacking me very positively to be here. It is not often that we are given an open opportunity like this to speak about ourselves and our politics. More often we are pinned down. I really enjoyed this.
And I realize that we can't shy away from the political conversation because yes. We're going to the national general elections. And from time to time, as we have had previously, invite different people from different organizations, as we also do with other sectors of society. Again, thank you so much for coming. All the best with these programs that you have, and all the best with the campaigns and the elections next year.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure.